The short form, the Yang short form, or what maybe some people call the 24 form, do you use or had you used that in your past for teaching?
No, I haven't. However, well, by the way, I had heard it called a synthetic because it takes something from many forms. But I had a student in Des Moines, Iowa, and she used to use it to get people used to Tai Chi, and then she would teach the Cheng Man Ch'ing form. I'm not the kind of a person that insists you do things my way. I offer the Cheng Man Ch'ing form, and people who don't want to take it, don't take it. People who want to take it, take it. And then they have to teach it. So they have to figure out what works for them. And my student in Des Moines, Iowa, who unfortunately passed away, but she taught the 24 and then the Cheng Man Ch'ing form.
The
Memorable moments. If you would share with us maybe one or two of the memorable moments that just stand out in your memory today.
Absolutely. First, I don't know how he may have been intuitive, or you could even wonder if he was a little bit psychic. But when I came up to the school, I knocked on the door, and this short Chinese man answered the door, and I said, "Is can I get Tai Chi here?" And he said, "No." I said, "Is Cheng Men Ching here?" I did not know that he did not speak English. And he said, no. And then this little old Chinese man dressed in a traditional uniform, Cheng Man Ching, came up behind the man and spoke to him in Chinese. And the guy turned around and said, yes, new class starts next Tuesday.
Oh,
And
wow.
my next thing is, he gave me medicine for my health. I
Mm.
was very, very sickly. And he took the pulses. There are 9 pulses in each wrist. Three light, three middle, and three heavy. And he gave me Chinese medicine. But in addition, he told me about my medical past. And I didn't know that that wasn't part of Chinese medicine particularly, but he gave me these herbal prescriptions to go fill. And when I was filling it, the gentleman at the Chinese apothecary was a doctor of Chinese medicine, and I told him what Professor Cheng had told me, and I said, "Can you do that?" And he said, "I could barely tell what your health is now." The next things are really Tai Chi things. He made me a teacher in his school eventually. And that's the most treasureful, one of those wonderful things. Only 8 people ever became teachers in his school. There were the senior 6 in New York, Herman Kors, who was at the time the highest ranking non-Japanese in Shotokan karate and a world-class judo player, and then me, and I was a junior person. I was not a standout, and I was very enthusiastic, but I knew what I did not know. And also, his push hands. He settled down next to me. I took off. When he neutralized, I could push straight in and he'd go all the way back. And I couldn't get, he wore these pressed uniforms. I couldn't get the press. I couldn't get the seam to touch his skin. He was that soft. And the first time I did it, I fell over myself. He just got out of my way, and it was like I was touching a cloud and I went by. After that, I learned to stay up a little bit, and he just touched my back and sent me flying. So that was wonderful too. And that's what got me away from being judo tough, from yanking people out of their boots, so to speak, throwing them. That to learn to finesse, to touch, to feel.
So, with him not speaking any English, I guess it was a lot of hands-on and touch you, fix you, or did he have a translator there as well?
He often did. He almost always did. As a
Mm.
matter of fact, he taught courses on the Confucius Great Learning and ethics. His idea of Chun Yun was not, as it's often given, the doctrine of the mean. His idea was do not too little, do not too much, do it not too early, do it not too late. You can see that there's a big difference between trying to do the average thing and at the average time and trying to do the exact appropriate thing at the exact appropriate time.
That's
You
right.
still teach now? How do you carry on his legacy? You know,
Well, COVID kind of did it for my school. I was teaching advanced students and they scattered to the four winds over COVID. However, I oversee schools. I have people who have schools around the country. I often forget some, but from New York on Long Island, in Santa Fe, outside Asheville, North Carolina, in
Hmm.
Philadelphia, PA. I don't know uh, if Kurt has a class or not in Berkeley, West Virginia, but the people sometimes people come to me and take it back with them. But these are all people who studied in New York and then went their ways, but took the Tai Chi with them. And so when they come to New York, they take private class to correct and make sure that they're staying on target. And when I go to them, I teach their students.
So did Master Chen Ching ever express to you what his overall, I guess, purpose behind Tai Chi? What was his reason for passing it on to others or whatever? What was his mission?
You know, it's funny with all the push hands in martial arts. He said that he was giving us Tai Chi for our health, and he was giving us Chun Yun and the Great Learning for our ethics. It was all intended, his entire body of learning was intended to make us better human beings.
Mm, that's pretty powerful.
It
Yeah.
struck a chord with me, and I'm so lucky, and I've been so happy as a result.
Bill, where do you see Tai Chi going from this point on forward?
I have to admit that I'm a little concerned. On the one hand, we have many good teachers in many styles out there. But on the other hand, somebody came up with this idea of an 8-hour class to make a teacher.
Mm,
And I don't think they should call it Tai Chi, but that's what they're doing. In 8 hours, you can't even get the basics of a form, much less the basics of how to do it. And yet, I had a student uh, who teaches in parks in Brooklyn, and she was vacationing in Florida and she saw an ad for an 8-hour class, so she went there. And the teacher was certifying everybody after teaching them a very simple form, and that was it, just the movements, and then giving them a certificate. And I have been told that a certificate of this sort is what many rehabilitation centers and old age homes want. Now, these people don't have any real idea of what Tai Chi is, which is why I'm so sorry they're calling it Tai Chi. But I'm worried that people will go to the lowest common denominator and that we'll lose. Not that I will lose. I was a school teacher for 33 years and I'm retired and I have my social security. So it's not about money. It's about I want to pass on what I'm doing, which is why my last classes when I had my school, I taught advanced people. I taught people who'd been my students. My most senior student had been with me since 1981. And so I had more senior students, but they went their way. But the thing is that there's a body of knowledge which we want to pass on, all of us, everybody, you guys too. And people aren't going to be open to accepting it if this 8-hour thing catches
I
on.
think, though, the people that want to find the truth will find it.
Yes, but I think that it will be very much fewer people than otherwise. And if you have a number of people that come to your classes that just come because they want Tai Chi and they don't know they want to be a teacher, they may discover that they want to be a teacher. I had read Robert Smith's book, Secrets of Shaolin Temple Boxing, and the one he wrote with Don Drager, Asian martial arts, I think, Asian fighting arts. And so I was predisposed to hear my teacher, Stan Israel, who was my jujitsu teacher, who was a senior student of Professor Cheng, to tell me about this little old man in Chinatown But ironically, he never told me where the school was or how to get there. I had to knock on doors to find it for myself. But the thing is that I didn't know until I met him that I was predisposed to want to make my life Tai Chi. Um, so that if more people can find it, there'll be more good teachers and good practitioners, and even tournament champions. A number of my people have been winning tournaments for a long time. And Ben Lowe, who's a much more senior to me, he started Tai Chi, I think, the year I was born. He's passed away now, but he had champions too. So that, and then people see that and then they want to study that. And even if somebody comes in competition minded, they learn about the calming benefits and they learn about the health benefits, and they might just find that they have a calling. I did.
Um, Chen Man Ch'ing was a student of Yang Chong Fu.
Yes.
And in my mind, I'm just thinking, wow, that's just amazing, And did he share any of his stories about learning under such a powerful man?
Yes, he did. Um, One thing he said is that one of the things that Yang Cheng Fu could do was if they put a bird in his hand, he could neutralize the bird so that it couldn't take off. He would, when the bird pushed, his hand would go down, and when the bird stopped pushing, his hand would go back up. And so the bird couldn't get his feet off the ground, so the bird couldn't fly. Another thing he said is not that comes to mind is not that happy, I guess, a story, in that he said when he went to play Yang Cheng Fu the first time, he put his hand on Professor Chang's jaw, and the next thing you know, he was across the room, and everything hurt. Not only is the hand that had been on his face caused his face to hurt, but his whole body hurt. He felt like his energy was very interrupted. He
Wow.
also would say that when he was studying, he would get so tired, he would come home and sit down, and he didn't have the energy even to get into bed. He just fell over right where he was. I saw just a teeny little bit of that kind of thing when I was in class with him, and you got to understand, I started my physical exercise with cross country running in high school, then to judo and jujitsu, then to karate, then to tai chi. But he worked me out so badly. When we were at the Shurjung school, we were 4 flights up, and I'd run up the stairs 2 and 3 at a time. I go down the stairs holding on to the banister because my legs were going to collapse and I would fall down the stairs if I didn't grab the banister. So he also, one other interesting thing, this is a story third hand. Mario Napoli uh, told this
Mm.
story when I ran the 100th anniversary of the birth of Professor Cheng Man Ch'ing. And yes, I ran it a year early. I ran it in 2000. But he said that Stanley tried to dig his fingers into Cheng Man Ch'ing's legs when they were sitting, and his legs were like iron. There was no give.
Mm. Amazing. So what would the typical class be like for you guys? If there
Well,
was typical, let's say.
when there was being a student and then there was correction. When I was in correction with him, there were 50 or 60 people in the class, and do he would show us some Tai Chi, which is something that he always did, even back to Ben Lowe's time. Though Ben Lowe would say that he didn't correct, he expected you to learn it. But then he would come around and correct, and thereby he would kill our legs because he expected us to stay in the posture until he did the whole class. And
Oh,
so you're staying in a deep stance for like 15, 20 minutes, and
yeah.
your legs are killing you. Then finally, when he finishes the class, everybody stands up, shakes out. You do the round of form, get to another posture, and then you stay there again for another 15, 20 minutes.
Ooh, eating bitter, huh?
Yeah. And
Wow.
then when he corrected push hands, though, that's when he would just you would line up the people against the wall with the people trying to neutralize, the people not against the wall were doing the pushing, and he would just go down the line and make little corrections. But if somebody was playing with too much strength, he would have, pushing, he would have them step out and come around, and he would push them into the wall a few times so they could feel it. He was always very soft with me and very gentle with me, though I went flying. But other people said he felt like a dump truck moving at 60 miles an hour, that he literally could slam people into walls really good. He
Mhm.
just touched me and I started to float away like I was a helium balloon all my life. And in slow motion, I saw him reaching for and grabbing my wrist, and I'm watching my hand play out. And then when I get to the extent of my hand, boom, then I realized that I was going up on about 45-degree angle very quickly. And if he didn't grab my arm, I would have smacked the wall pretty hard. I don't know yoga from India, but Professor Cheng said that there were things in his form which were yoga, and he explained one in detail. His grass sparrow's tail, when you can get the shoulder back behind the chest, this opens a lung meridian. And he said, for those that feel they have to do it on the other side, this closes the lung meridian. He said, um, oh, step back and repulse monkey and wave hands in clouds. If you do it reasonably well, you have your belly button 90 degrees to your toes, and that is good for the digestion. And there
Wow.
are other things. I
So he's using a lot of medical qigong in his form.
yes.
Mm,
And also, you get the chi. If you do, he called it the raise hands back and down. I call it the chi exercise because if you breathe to the dantian while doing this, you'll get the chi out your hands. If you breathe to the dantian while doing it, you'll get the energy coming to your bubbling well, which is kidney one in shiatsu and in acupuncture.
hmm
And when, you know, he had said that the movement should be done all in one piece. However, um, until recently, I have found that I sometimes would gently pause before I went back the other way because I wanted to give the chi time to get into my fingers. And I've come to the conclusion on my own, this is not from him, that Tai Chi it should be one continual flow of chi. And that if you have to stop, and after all, you change directions, there's a stop as small as it may be when you're changing directions. Um, that it's not one continuous movement, but it's one continuous flow of chi.
mm. Okay. Have you found that your form, your whatever form that you practice on a daily basis, has it changed over the years on how you do it?
You know, it's funny that you should ask that. In very small ways, as I work at it, and I was told that this was going to happen. Master Jiao Hua, the guy who had the Tai Chi farm, he he was a friend, and he one time we were just sitting around talking, and he said, "Bill, the Tai Chi form is going to become your teacher," and I said to him, "You're crazy. I study with Cheng Man Ch'ing. I'm studying with Zhang Luping. I have wonderful teachers, and I'm very, very sorry that he passed away before I was able to catch him up and tell him he was right." But as you just practice, the form will show you exactly how to go, exactly how to get your spine straight, exactly how to get your hand flowing so that the energy comes out of it in the most efficient way. So he gave us tips, but it has to grow on you, which is another thing what's wrong, I think, with the 8-hour course. It doesn't start to grow on you till you've been at it for a while. And then you can see that you take your teacher's instructions and you follow them as absolutely well as you can. But then after that, you start to see where there's a little thing which maybe the teacher didn't catch. Maybe you're doing it wrong. Or maybe you just learned how to do it even better and you just do it. And the form is there. If you just practice at least twice a day, it will happen.
So some of the schools seem to have conflicting opinions in regards to when you're doing the form, whether or not you imagine a partner or an opponent being there, and when you're doing push hands. I think Cheng Man Ch'ing had a certain take on that.
I have a take on that, and I will tell you straight out. And some of my friends were used to imagine a partner, and in fighting, and in from the form, they would imagine the martial arts applications. And I have a one simple question for them, which cured them of it. What if you're always planning that your partner is going to do this when you practice your form and you defend against it wonderfully, and then your partner does something else? You're screwed. And also, thinking about it, you know, you've got to the Tai Chi mind, and this also came from Professor. They asked him if he did meditation, and his answer was no. I don't do seated meditation. I do Tai Chi. Tai Chi is the meditation. And if you're doing Tai Chi and you're keeping your mind empty, you're preparing yourself to cleave to any opponent, to do the exact appropriate physical thing at the exact appropriate physical time to win, to defeat
Mm-hmm.
them. And so you can't achieve, excuse me, you cannot achieve that if you're doing your form and imagining that you're fighting the same opponent doing the same moves. In judo, they used to say that the most dangerous opponents are beginners because they don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say you have to always be prepared for anything. And the best way to do that is to clear your mind, to practice keeping your mind empty so that I read Bob Smith's book. And by the way, then I finally got to meet Bob Smith in 1974. And I have a funny story, if we have time for it, about Bob Smith.
You better
Um,
believe, yeah.
in 1974, at the, excuse me, 1975, at the Professor Cheng's memorial in New York, I met Robert Smith. And what happened was always wanted to meet him. So I read his books. I asked my mentor under Professor Cheng, Morty Raphael, if we could take a picture and meet him and take a picture. And Morty said, sure. And he introduced us and we took a picture. Cut forward to the mid to late 90s. And Robert Smith is working up at William Chen's place, and William Chen was a friend. So we figured we go by and say hello. I brought a copy, an 8 by 10 of the picture that Bob Smith and I took in 1975. And in the 1990s, I wanted to give it to him, but he was talking when we got there. So we sat and we listened. And if you knew Bob Smith, he was always a fascinating speaker. So we were entertained. But then when he called a break, everybody rushed up to him. They wanted to get things signed. They wanted his autograph. And so there was either I had to cut the line or get on it. So I figured, let me get on it. So when I came up to him, I presented the picture, and he was just signing things. He wasn't looking. He signed the picture, gave it back to me. And then I said, wait a minute, and gave it back to him. And then he looked at it, and we both laughed.
Caught in the moment.
And then we became really friends because we would talk on the phone once a month for the rest of his life. And he always knew all of the gossip of Cheng Man Ch'ing's Tai Chi. And so I say we talk on the phone. I said hello and then I listened. And occasionally I gave him a little piece of gossip, but mainly on a half an hour call, it was 28 minutes him and 2 minutes me.
I'm sure he had a lot to share.
Well, he had a lot to share. He knew
Right.
what everybody was doing.
Well, it's amazing. You've been doing Tai Chi longer than, you started before I was even on the planet. I came into the world in 73, so you were already doing Tai Chi.
Well, I'm glad that you have gone the path that you have gone. You are the generation that's got to take over from the old timers like me. So I'm just grateful that you are on the planet and that you are seriously proceeding with Tai Chi.
100%. Quote my Sifu's quote that I give my life to Tai Chi and Tai Chi gives me life. And that's been true in so many ways. It's amazing how the art continues to give when you make it your life.
I agree. I think I might be dead already without it. So
Yeah.
the
Myself.
health benefits. Doing it every morning and night is also a good it's a good discipline, but when you start doing it, the energy comes out. It's like drawing candy. And so a lot of times I get up, I say, oh, I got to do Tai Chi. But by the time I get through what I call the Chi exercise, I'm good for the whole form. I'm just so up. I finally got started into my day. By the way, I have found, for what it's worth, that if you did not sleep well, the Tai Chi will help in the morning, will help you get sleepy and take a nap. If you did sleep well, it will leave you all charged up and ready for your day. In the evening, if you've had a good day, you do the round and it will help settle you down and let you prepare for sleep. If you've had a terrible day and enervating day, tense day, and you haven't really exhausted yourself, it will leave you all wired up. So
Mm.
if you have, it's important to have a good day and to get a good night's sleep, and then the Tai Chi will aid you in that rhythm.
It kind of balances everything out regardless.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a question we had internally among us. When's the best time to practice Tai Chi? Or is there a correct time or better time?
Well,
So,
Professor used to say, do it in the morning and do it at night and do it in the evening. He said, do it in the morning first thing. But I have to admit, I can't. When I get up first thing, I got to brush my teeth, use the bathroom, then I do Tai Chi. And he said, last thing at night before bed, and that I can pretty much do. And he said also practice it in the middle of the day to perfect it. But he said if you're doing it morning and night, his image was the same way that the stars only move a set amount in the sky. You can't accumulate more benefit by doing it 100 times in a day. So you can improve at doing it by practicing it more often. But for the benefit, morning and night. And also, I would add, do the meditative chi round morning and night. If you want to perfect your form, do it, and you can do it then before the nighttime or after the morning time, or better yet, in the middle of the day. Um, and it will be a benefit. By the way, another story comes up. If you know, I was a school teacher, the high school English teacher and I guess you could call it a tough school, Westinghouse Vocational and Technical. And I had this one kid, and he was a real troublemaker. He would try to talk to people in the class, and when they wouldn't, he would sit behind them and try to light their hair on fire. And I had to stay by him, and eventually he'd get tired and run out of the class. Well, one day, at the thought of him coming, I did several rounds of the chi exercise, and I happened to be standing right near his desk. And for the first time ever, he came in, sat down, and went to sleep. And I was so happy that I started doing some rounds every day by all of the chairs that he might sit in. And whenever he came, he went to sleep, and and that was just such a benefit of somebody else being able to feel my chi exercise.